So today, even more appropriate than yesterday, we're going to learn about the first paragraph of the Shema, because at the end of it, we talk about binding it on our arm and on our head and on the mezuzah. And all three are actually in chapter 13 of Exodus, which is part of the four questions of the four sons on Seder night. So we're really getting there. And he explains a lot of very amazing details that aren't so obvious from the verses. So, the Shema paragraph, Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 9, consists of three sections. The first section is the foundation of faith. Second, the meaning of this foundation in our lives. And three, instructions on how to instill faith into our lives. Because I think it was Rabbeinu Bechaye when he wrote Chavot Levavot, which is literally the duties of the heart. He said that that after you do all kinds of actions, if you do them repeatedly, your heart will be filled with them, and you'll understand the connection between the actual duty and the implementation or the application to your heart and soul. So from the first verse, this is section 1, in these 6 verses. From the first verse, Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. We learn that the foundation of the unifying belief of Israel, that Hashem, blessed be He, is the master of everything, and there is no force in this world other than He, meaning there are other forces, but Hashem is the one who controls them. So even if it looks like there's the sun and the moon and the clouds and the rain and all that, it's all controlled by Hashem 100%. And the other thing is, in terms of this foundation, the first one to declare that Hashem was master not only of what happens on earth but also in the sky was Rahab, when the 2 spies came sent by Joshua. So again, coming into the land of Israel after the 40 years. And the other thing is that in terms of this unifying belief, Israel was also the second name of Jacob, our forefather. And according to the Midrash, he was worried that just like Abraham and Isaac had a son that didn't follow his ways, Abraham had Ishmael and Jacob and Isaac had Esau. He asked his 12 sons, are you with me? Are you united in this one belief? And according to the Midrash, it was their response, Shema Yisrael, calling him by his first name, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, and that's what gave him the peace that he needed at the end of his days. And last but not least, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam, which we add today in the Shema, was his response, even though that verse is nowhere to be found anywhere in the Torah. So that's the idea of this unification, that Hashem is in charge of everything, even though it may seem to us that there are other distinct powers separate from one another. We just experienced the eclipse and other stuff like that. Hashem, who is one, sustains all life, and there is no one else who can do that. The second section of the first paragraph of the Shema is the significance of this belief in our lives, is that there is no other value in this world aside from the devotion to Hashem, blessed be He. Hence, love Hashem, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. We mentioned this yesterday, but let's delve a little bit into it. The Chachamim sages in Brachot 54a interpret these words with all your heart, with both your inclination, with both of your inclinations, with the good inclination, Yetzer Tov, and with your evil inclination, Yetzer Hara. There's a few different explanations for this, but Rabbi Melamed makes it very simple for us. Because one's evil inclination must also be controlled to serve Hashem, whether by force or by transforming it into good, then that's why we say B'chol Levavcha with 2 bets, which include those 2. And just a very simple example, when a baby is crying when they're still an infant, then it would seem to adults around this baby that this baby is just being selfish and crying for food and why should we care? And so it's Yetzer Hara because for the first 13 years of a child, for a boy and 12 for a girl, they need to work with that Yetzer Hara because otherwise they won't live. But so that's why Yetzer Hara has to drive us for those very basic things. And then eventually, at the age of Bar and Bat Mitzvah, we graduate and we understand that now we have to submit the Yetzer Hara to worshiping Hashem. And we have 13 years to practice that, saying, sometimes I'm not going to be that selfish. For example, if I have an orange and my best friend came over to do homework with me, then at the age of 8 or 9 or 10, I'm not going to say this orange is mine, therefore I'm going to eat it all, but rather I'm going to share it with my friend because he's my friend, and I'm going to say, Yetzer Hara, sorry, I'm controlling you instead of you controlling me. That's my understanding of this control to serve Hashem. And with all your soul, this is the second part of the verse, even if it takes your life, for a person must be ready to give their life for the belief in Hashem. We have the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, to die even for the namesake of Hashem. And as far as I know, Noachides, people who keep the 7 Noachide laws are not obligated to do this, but there's much to be written about that. When I was living in Boca Raton 25 years ago, somebody wanted to learn with me these laws, and he was actually going to write a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law for non-Jews, and we couldn't get to a proper definition if a non-Jew is supposed to sacrifice their life. Unfortunately, today, there's so many people who in the name of God, are sacrificing their life. But Rabbi Sachs, of course, wrote a book called Not in the Name of God, because I believe that his understanding is that only Jews are supposed to sacrifice their life for the sake of Hashem. That's the second one. And with all of your might, with all of your resources, even a person's money should serve as a basis and a means to serve Hashem, so that if it were demanded of a Jew to violate his religion or lose all of his wealth, he would forfeit his money rather than defy his belief. Okay, that's a little bit harder for us because we live in a capitalist society where we appreciate money, we appreciate our wealth, we don't really know always how to use it in the best way. I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm just saying from my own experience, it is very hard for us to give up all of our life. But we have so many stories from our history where people gave up hundreds of rubles to have a lulav and esrog for Sukkot, and technically the mitzvah is to spend as much money as you can, if you'll be able to keep even one mitzvah. So again, it's hard for us as capitalists to understand it, but we have so many amazing examples from our past of people who actually did this. Additionally, they interpret with all your might. For each and every measure that Hashem bestows upon you, be grateful to Him very, very much. And in the future, when there's less suffering, we will actually say not only Baruch Dan Emet, which is what we say now when somebody dies, but we will say Baruch Atov Amativ. We will say the blessing that Hashem, you are so good to us. We don't understand why this person died, but it must be good for us. And again, it's a process. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of studying and practicing to get to that level. And the third section of the first paragraph, the Torah instructs us regarding how to instill these foundations of belief in ourselves. First, put these words that I am commanding you today into your heart, and additionally teach them to your sons. Even after a person learns the basic tenets of faith very well, if he does not repeat them to himself every day, life's dealings and worries can cause him to forget them. And therefore, we are commanded and say them when you sit in your house, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. I'll just mention that I wrote an article a few years ago about being on our way, that we can listen to music that's from the radio, or we can put a USB key or a disc with a Torah shir. It's our choice what we listen to when we are in our car or or any other kind of vehicle. From this, we learn the obligation to recite Shema both in the morning and at night. Nevertheless, the Torah does not suffice with its recital alone, but rather adds the commandment to place these paragraphs of belief into our tefillin, the phylacteries, and to bind them on our arms and heads, as it is written, and you shall bind them as a sign on your arm, and they should be as frontlets between your eyes. I think that's an old English translation. Today we say phylacteries. We are also commanded to fix them firmly in the mezuzot on our doorposts, as it is written, and write them on your doorposts of your houses and our gates. And just last but not least, in order to explain what tefillin really is, this is so that every time we enter and exit our house, we look at the mezuzah and are reminded again of the foundation of Israel's faith. So in the mezuzah, there are 2 paragraphs, the paragraph of Shema and Vayim Shemua, and in the tefillin, there are 4 paragraphs, the ones that we just mentioned, Shema and Vayim Shemua, and also from chapter 13 of Exodus, which is my Bar Mitzvah Parsha. So if you can all see this, in verse 9, it says, that it should be a sign for you on your arm and a memory between your eyes, in order for Hashem's Torah to be in your mouth, because of the Exodus. And again, verses 11 till the end of the parsha, and this is actually mentioning again the question of the sun. So in verse 16, the Torah doesn't repeat mitzvahs for nothing. So if you notice in verse 13, Yadcha is written without a hey at the end of it, right here. And in verse 16, it does say a hey, and so the rabbis learned from that, and this is maybe a little bit out of the scope of our class, that yadcha is yad keha, so you actually bind the tefillin on your weaker arm. So if you are righty, you put it on your left arm, and if you are a lefty, you put it on your right arm. And that's just another learning. So that's how important it is, and all 4 paragraphs are written in the tefillin and can be understood and found and remembered all the time. And try to cancel it.